Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone for the 11th of June, episode 86. Richard Saunders here with you once again. On this week's show, we have an interview conducted by Kylie Sturgis with Professor David Blair from Western Australia, all about cosmology, gravity, art, all sorts of interesting things. I hope you'll enjoy it. And that's followed by The Think Tank with myself, Dr. H.E., and Jason, otherwise known as Drunken Madman. Thank you for all those people writing in, letting me know how much you enjoy the show. And if you really do enjoy the show, why not tell your friends, tell your family, tell your pets, and tell your enemies? The more listeners we get, the better it is for everybody, I think. So if you enjoy the show, please don't be shy. Help us spread the word. But for now, grab that cup of Earl Grey tea, hot, and enjoy this week's Skeptic Zone.
I'm Kylie Sturgis, and I'm talking to Professor David Blair. Professor David Blair is an Australian physicist and Professor of Physics at the University of Western Australia, and he is the Director of the Australian International Gravitational Research Centre. The Gravity Discovery Centre is a premier science education centre in Western Australia for physics and astronomy, and it is the only centre in Australia with a focus on gravity and cosmology. It is well known as a tourism destination, and it is a place that manages to bring not only science, but art and religion together. Due to lack of government funding, the Gravity Discovery Centre is under threat. So I hope that this interview with Professor David Blair helps raise some awareness of what this place has to offer. I'm here with Professor David Blair, the Director of the Australian International Gravitational Research Centre. The Australian International Gravitational Observation Site is at Gingin, which is about an hour north from where we are right now in the Physics Building at the University of Western Australia. The Gravity Discovery Centre at the IGO site is open to the public and draws tens of thousands of visitors, and one fascinating aspect is the Cosmology Gallery. Thank you very much for joining me here today, Professor David Blair.
I'm pleased to be with you.
How did the Cosmology Gallery come to be here in Perth?
Well, about 10 years ago, we started to plan a public education centre. And we did lots of brainstorming and came up with a set of themes for this centre. And we wanted to make use of all the special attributes of our site. And the special attributes of the site are fantastic clear sky, a great place for building a gravitational wave detector because it's flat, fantastic biodiversity. It's one of these wonderful, rich places where every plant looks quite extraordinary and very beautiful. And then we wanted to have a gallery that we called the Discovery Gallery. We wanted to have a gallery that we called the Innovation Gallery. Innovation Gallery was going to be about how Western Australians have made innovations, have invented things of world significance, because often West Australians don't know what their people have done. And what we wanted to do was to empower young people to say, you can do something of world significance. But then also we wanted to get that sort of inspirational aspect of the of why are we astronomers? Why do we want to know this? And try to find some commonality between the traditional owners of our site, who we have a very good relationship with, who are people who were brought up with Dreamtime, who believe in the woggle that created the landscape. And so how could we put together something that was about our science, but also that was consistent with their beliefs? And I guess I always believed that we didn't have to be in conflict. I've always believed that I've always been interested in religion and in different religions, and And I've always thought to myself that, you can't have 1 billion Christians being right and the other 6 billion in the world being 5 billion people of other religions and beliefs being wrong, or and anything of that sort. There had to be some commonality. So we came up with the idea, and in fact, it's a slogan, really, that we use for the Cosmology Gallery, which is unity through diversity in a vast and awe-inspiring universe.
Nice.
And the commonality is this vastness of the universe and the human yearning to understand our place in the universe. And so the unity is our unity of that yearning, that all human beings yearn to understand their place in the universe. They try to find the answers, and they find the answers in different ways. Nowadays, we have tools that have let us find, with telescopes and things, to find a much more precise answer. But across civilizations, you find a range of answers. I also believe that if you put all those answers together and let them be seen together, it allows people to understand that those ideas are stories which are trying to interpret the truth of what people observe, and people will tend not to take them all literally if you see them all together. So we were lucky enough to get funding and to build this amazing place. Funny thing is, when I was a child, when I was about 16, I did something very crazy. To think of it now, I think it's really crazy. I designed a church, designed a cathedral, and I sent it to the Archbishop and said, "Hey, here's a great design for a cathedral. Why don't you build it?"
Brilliant. Wow, that's forward thinking.
So I felt incredibly privileged to be able to be in a position to actually do something that I had yearned about as a kid, and to create a place that could be the venue for getting that sort of inspirational thinking going ahead. And then we got funding from the Lottery West to hire artists from different cultural backgrounds, and we had workshop sessions with the artists, and we talked about the scientific ideas and about their own ideas, and the fact that all their artworks were going to be put together, and we were trying to find some commonality while still staying true to their traditions. So the result was that we've got this beautiful gallery, and inside it there are Dreamtime images. There's a wonderful Hindu image. There's a wonderful Buddhist mandala. All sorts of different images that reflect the different cultural traditions, plus the scientific history of the universe as we understand it, all put together.
And it's separated by the floors. I noticed the downstairs has Penrose tiling, which I believe you even had the man himself come to see. Yeah. Plus a bit of mixing around the place. We haven't been trying to be too fixed in that. And then the gallery has a huge dome. Yes.
The dome itself is the largest buckyball in the world, icosahedron. And the nice thing about that shape is its history. First of all, Pythagoras described that shape when he believed that the secret of the universe was in geometry. And then Leonardo drew it. And then Buckminster Fuller patented it for use in soccer balls.
Yeah.
So this is, millennium after millennium. But then, 1985, it was discovered in nature. So in a sense, Pythagoras was right. There it was in nature, actually existing, and that's these little fullerene molecules made out of carbon called carbon-60. So, and that has a beautiful 5 and 6-fold symmetry. And to have that over the top, and then underneath the Penrose tiling, which is non-periodic but still has a 5-fold symmetry, and it represents the sort of pinnacle of mathematics today. So we've created that connection, and it even includes the soccer ball and popular culture.
All within the one amazing gallery. It's great.
Yeah.
Now, if people want to find out more about the site and the activities there, where do they go?
We have there's a really good website, but there's also a nice web page which is called igo.org.au. That is the web page for the Gravitational Wave Observatory, because really now what we're trying to do is consolidate our education programs. We're just starting a fantastic PhD project there where we're going to have 4 PhDs who are working on evaluating the different ways that we are teaching. And one of the ways we're teaching is having kids involved in using a big telescope to detect gamma ray bursts, which we think are sources of gravity waves, which we think are black holes being formed in the early universe. And by linking up with satellites, we can quickly move our telescope and see these gamma ray bursts, which are occurring when the universe was about 1 billion years old. In other words, more than 10 billion years ago, more than twice the age of the Earth ago. So one of the ways we're trying to excite kids is to let them realize that they're actually able to see light that was emitted twice the age of the Earth ago, and seeing into the past and kind of getting those amazing ideas of astronomy.
What has been the overall response in regards to this? Because it seems to be quite unique and even quite challenging for some people, I guess, to have both the science and religious worldviews combined in one place.
Yeah, well, I've actually been quite surprised that nobody has complained since we built it. But before we built it, when I was talking to a physicist who comes from southern United States, he said, "This is a terrible mistake. Don't even think about building this." He said, "You'll have creationists coming in and desecrating it, and you'll create religious disharmony." There's been no sign whatsoever of that here. Perhaps that would happen in southern USA, but it's been great here that there's been no complaint whatsoever about putting these ideas together.
Now, what are some of the other future plans for the site? What can we look forward to if we go visit it again?
The other piece that's there was the bit that was to be the wow factor for the teenage kids, and that's the Leaning Tower of Jinjin.
Yes, I've went up it, 222 steps. It was quite an experience,
Yeah, and it's wonderful to look at classes of school kids up there having carried balloons full of water to the top and then dropping these balloons, repeating Galileo's experiments. I think the idea behind that is also quite fun, which is that we are, because we are trying to promote a sort of skeptical scientific view of the world, and in this case we've turned the tables on Galileo. Because Galileo said in his writings, if you were to drop 2 things from the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and if they were to land 2 fingers' widths apart in their fall at the point of impact, would you say that the Aristotelians were correct? Because the Aristotelians, the followers of Aristotle, believed that things fell at a speed proportional to their mass. Well, you don't actually need a leaning tower to convince yourself that a 1 kilo rock doesn't fall twice as fast as a half kilo rock. You just have to drop them both on your toes and they'll both hurt at the same time.
Exactly.
But at the same time, that was Galileo's argument. And we asked the kids to go up there with identical balloons and see if they can make them land within 2 fingers' widths of each other.
Yeah.
They can't do it. It can't be done. The reason it can't be done is that human reflexes are slightly asymmetric because we've got asymmetric brains. As a result, you can't let go of 2 balloons simultaneously to within a millisecond, which is what is required to achieve this 2 fingers widths. And so the kids go away saying, well, Galileo was not telling the truth. In the sense that he didn't actually do the experiment, but he didn't lie because he never claimed to have done the experiment. In his writings, it's actually written as a thought experiment, so we can laud him as the first person who who at least published a thought experiment and made deductions on the basis of a thought experiment. But still, the kids turn the tables on Galileo and are able to say he could not have done that experiment.
Now, if people want to find out more about the site and the activities there, where do they go?
We have there's a really good website which is Gravity Centre. Google Gravity Discovery Centre. Let's not try to give you a web address, but there's also a nice web page which is called igo.org.au. That is the web page for the Gravitational Wave Observatory. Because really now what we're trying to do is consolidate our education programs. We're just starting a fantastic PhD project there where we're going to have 4 PhDs who are working on evaluating the different ways that we are teaching. And one of the ways we're teaching is having kids involved in using a big telescope to detect gamma ray bursts, which we think are sources of gravity waves, which we think are black holes being formed in the early universe. And by linking up with satellites, we can quickly move our telescope and see these gamma ray bursts, which are occurring when the universe was about 1 billion years old. In other words, more than 10 billion years ago, more than twice the age of the Earth ago. So one of the ways we're trying to excite kids is to let them realise that they're actually able to see light that was emitted twice the age of the Earth ago, and seeing into the past and kind of getting those amazing ideas of astronomy as part of their actual experience.
So it's all happening here, right here in Perth. It's great. To find out more about the Gravity Discovery Centre, head to www.gravitycentre.com.au. If you head to my site at podblack.com, you'll even find a video of me going up the Leaning Tower.
AstronomyCast takes a facts-based journey through the cosmos as it offers listeners weekly discussions on astronomical topics ranging from planets to cosmology. Hosted by Fraser Kane of Universe Today and myself, Dr. Pamela Gay of Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, this show brings the questions of an avid astronomy lover directly to an astronomer. Together, Fraser and I explore what is known and being discovered about the universe around us. Join us each week as we take a facts-based journey through the cosmos at astronomycast.com.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
On the banjolele.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Think Tank.
You're recording.
And we were just, hi George Rubb, we were just watching and listening to your fantastic video, one of the best videos on the internet. By far.
By far.
By far, Jason. Hi, Jason.
Good evening, Richard.
Good evening. And hello, Dr. H.E.
Hello, Richard. Hi, Jason.
Hello.
Now, normally we're doing the think tank from our favourite club down the street, but our favourite club down the street is, well, not really let us down, but they were rather packed tonight, Dr. H.E.
Yeah, they had some show on called El Devo.
El Dago.
Something like that.
El Dago.
Yeah, it was the walk out of work.
As in the sort of the pejorative term for a Spanish person.
Yeah, well, it's there's a comedy group here who do send up their own heritage, their Greek heritage. They call them Wogs Out of Work, or the Wog Boy, or something like that. So there are lots of people at the club. We searched high and low, but decided to finally end up here in Dr. H.E.'s front room. Never mind. Cheers.
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 Cheers. Thank you. Mm.
One of those is a bit plasticky.
It's a bit plastic. But we're, never fear. We're sitting here having a good time and waiting for our pizza.
Oh, delicious.
Oh, Mexican and supreme crust.
Delicious pizza.
Delicious, crusty pizza. It's great to be here in Rachel's front room think tank, which we've done before, Rachel.
We've done it once before, Richard, but yeah, it was some time ago. Actually, it was when we had Kylie on Skype.
On Skype, yeah.
And we did a think tank with Kylie via Skype from Perth. Yeah.
Very technological of you.
It was very technological.
It was. Now, tonight we're going to be covering such issues as homeopathy. We're going to be talking to Jason about a TAM Australia event. We're going to be listening to the planes flying overhead, which I can sort of just hear one now.
No, that's them landing, actually.
Oh, landing.
That's reverse thrust on them landing.
You know too much.
I do.
So I'm going to start off by covering a story which was brought to my attention by one of our listeners, thanks to Glenn Baker. Glenn Baker, who actually works at the ANZ Stadium here in Sydney. And this story is to do with our good old friends at the Power Balance. A magical bracelet that gives you magical energy and all the rest of it. And Glenn brought my attention to the Daily Telegraph newspaper, dated the 10th of June. On the whole back page, a huge section of the back page, I should say, most of it, is dedicated to a story which is normally the sports section, so it's a sports story. When all else fails, the Blues turn to a Band-Aid. And it's a big picture of the New South Wales Rugby League team, who aren't doing too well at the moment. And about half of them are wearing this Power Balance device.
I noticed they've got little visual call-outs on the wrists.
Yeah, you can see how many of them are wearing it. Now, as I said, they're not doing too well. And the report says, call them our last desperate play. A $2,400 mix of science, silicon...
How many dollars?
$2,400, it says here. It must be the value of the box they sent them. Silicon worn around the wrist of every New South Wales Origin player. Now, the Origin, that means that every year there are a series of games between this state, New South Wales, and Queensland, the state to our north, in rugby league. And the New South Wales team aren't doing very well. So they've been sent a box of Power Balance bracelets to wear. Yeah. And as a marketing ploy, it's worked better than your wildest dreams, because it's not only the whole back page with photographs of the team wearing this Power Balance, but half a page in the sports section, it's also another story about the same thing. Blues Band of Brothers. They've been likened to Superman's cape, only the New South Wales Origin players won't need to go running into a phone box before putting them on. The Daily Telegraph can reveal that the Blues officials have ordered in 40 Power Balance wristbands as part of a bizarre attempt to stop Queensland winning a record fifth consecutive State of Origin series.
So they're like Superman's cape, are they? Because we know from The Incredibles that the cape is a major health and safety problem. It can get you sucked into aeroplane engines, which I think figuratively New South Wales are going to get.
But isn't it also, Richard, if they actually worked, isn't this considered performance-enhancing stuff, therefore it's illegal?
This is a really good point. Now, if these things worked as claimed, in other words, they dramatically improve your balance, your strength, your stamina, all the things they claim about it, then yes, it's cheating. It's blatant cheating if they worked as claimed. And that's the big if.
Well, the funny thing is, I had a chance to look at the comments on this story online, and most of the comments were derogatory, by the way. Most of them said, well, if you're that hopeless that you need a little plastic rubber band, then you've got no chance. And then the other comments were, well, this is tantamount to cheating if you're going to use these things to enhance your performance.
That's a very good point. And the other day I was sitting at home and a reporter from the Sydney Morning Herald contacted me. They're doing a story about this Power Balance. And the reporter, I must say, I just can't recall her name, but she sounded very sceptical. She said, but what about the claims that it affects your body's biofield? And then she stopped and she said, I did biology at school. That sounds ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned before that this is a very, very good marketing exercise, and it's brilliant. I mean, this is how Power Balance targets what they do. They give it to elite athletes, they give it to basketballers, they give it to swimmers, similar to what LifeWave do, those LifeWave patches that I've blogged about before, and I talked about on the Zone months and months ago. And so once they have this legitimacy lent to them by elite sports players, people think, well, they must work. So everyone's going to see for the next month the New South Wales Blues team playing with these things on their wrist and think, well, I want one of those because they must work.
Well, the thing is, of course, if the Blues happen to win the next game, which I think is next week, you can bet there'll be people crowing saying, you see, it works. There's strange noises coming from out your window, Dr. H.
It's a human kookaburra.
I don't know what it is. Children, it's past your bedtime. Go
Don't you get like fires and crazy things happening in your street?
Yes, people that know me on Twitter would be aware that I have had a few strange occurrences here.
Like cars catching fire outside your door or
Cars
something?
catching on fire. Ninjas have been in the news recently, haven't they?
Yeah.
Ninjas?
I had ninjas. I'm quite serious.
Brilliant.
If you look out the window, and obviously listeners can't see this, but there's a large house with a turret right opposite here. I was sitting in this room one night and I happened to glance across and saw 5 ninjas on the roof of the house opposite me. The level of my flat, which is level 1, is level with the roof of this particular house. So if I had my lights on, which I did, they could have seen straight into my lounge room.
Ooh.
So I kind of creeped ninja-like across the floor and just propped my hands at the windowsill and watched the ninjas. And they climbed up there and they had a cigarette and then they got down again. So I don't think they did anything particularly damaging.
Smoking ninjas.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, so...
But yeah, back to the New South Wales Blues.
Back to the Blues. And Tom O'Dowd, who was quoted in the newspaper report, well, hell, if nothing else, he knows how to market his device. I'll give him that. I let the reporter from the Sydney Morning Herald know about the video that the Skeptic Zone put out a few weeks ago, showing how the tricks work. And I said, look at this video, and you'll get a better understanding of what's really going on here. It's a double-edged sword, I should say, because you never know when you talk to reporters how the story will come out. You know, they may quote you out of context. In fact, they often do. We'll wait and see.
Mind you, Richard, that video that we did for applied kinesiology, which was obviously the reason for that was because of power balance, has been doing really, really well, hasn't it?
Oh, yes. Thank you, everybody, for watching that. Of course, it's got over 5,000 downloads from the Skeptic Zone feed alone, and I think on YouTube. In fact, Jason, you can have a quick look for us if you wouldn't mind.
I can have a quick look. I'll just.
It's got on YouTube. It's going very well. It's got lots of comments.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Oh, there we are. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 3,740 views and 4 pages of comments. I've never had that many comments on one of my YouTube videos, but I will crow and say that I've had more views.
Okay. Well, it's only new, you know. I have had lots of... And thank you for the people who have been emailing me saying thank you, and they've used it themselves.
Yeah.
They've taught their kids how to do it and all sorts of things. So
and they've
fantastic.
done it for kids at parties or something to show them how it works. Yeah. Oh, God, I just sounded like Wakefield. I'm sorry for that. I'm channeling Wakefield.
Did you pay them all £5?
No, I didn't pay them £5.
Oh dear, I wonder if Wakefield uses applied kinesiology. Now, Jason, let me swing back to you.
Yes, Richard.
As you know, we're all very excited, and certainly listeners, rest assured that your TAM Australia team aren't sitting back. There's a lot to do, more than we ever anticipated.
Absolutely.
But, God, we wouldn't swap it for anything. It's so exciting. But, Jason, you've cooked up something as like a side event for TAM Australia.
We're going to do a TAM Australia fringe. We're going to have a few little side events.
A fringe, wow.
Fringe. Yes, it's going to be
fantastic.
Excellent. I kind of thought about it a few days ago that why not? We've got a week leading up to TAM Australia, and we've got a lot of exciting things we could do. Let's have a few events. So today I publicised an unofficial Skeptics open mic night, where we'll give anyone that wants to get up and talk on a scientific or skeptical subject 5 minutes to talk, 5 minutes to take questions and answers. So far I've got no idea where this is going to take place, but it'll probably be in a pub, so that we'll have a little bit of alcohol involved. We've had a few sign-ups already. It's on Facebook. You can find it with... if you search for the keywords TAM Australia and Open Mic, Open MIC, you'll find it on Facebook. Or you can go to my blog, which is mycolleaguesareidiots.com. And there's a little advert there. Or you can find me on Twitter at Drunken Madman and just ping me a message and I'll let you know all about it. So that's going to happen in the week coming up to TAM.
And how ironic is that? You're not, in fact, a drunken madman after all.
Well, I am sometimes.
Oh, well, all right.
That sounds really interesting, Jason, because obviously you don't know what you're going to get, right?
That's right.
Do people have to apply, or they just turn up on the night and...
Well, I'm expecting some people to let me know in advance, but I don't really mind. I think we should.
You're looking
take it
for a
as
very informal thing.
I am looking for a very, very informal thing. If you've ever been to an open mic night for musicians, you just turn up with your guitar and do a couple of songs. You just put your name on the list at the start of the evening, and off you go. And the audience reaction will gauge how long you stay on for, basically.
I'm really pleased about this idea because it'll give a lot of people the chance to meet some of our big names that we're flying in for TAM, of course, in a very informal and fun situation, which sounds great to me. I hope to come along myself.
Well, you haven't confirmed on Facebook.
I have.
Have you?
I have indeed.
Oh, you're not showing up in the list here. Let's just have a quick look.
Check the full listing. Check the full listing.
Well, on another note...
Oh, my apologies, you are there.
On another note, I noticed a couple of days ago on Twitter that Rebecca Watson has said she's planning to have a Skeptic party for TAM Oz as well. So we're going to have to fit that in somewhere, but that will be fun.
Oh, yes.
What does that mean?
Well, I've been to a couple of Skeptic parties in Las Vegas, and yes, they're fun.
Oh.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Don't worry, you'll find out soon.
Yes. Well, I guess we will.
And because, of course, Dr. H.E., myself, Joanne Benamu and Aran Sergev will be at TAM Las Vegas, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody there. And please, if you care to, if you enjoy the zone, please don't be shy. Come up and say hello. We'd love to meet you and have a chat. We're always very thrilled and honoured to chat to people who really enjoy the show, and we certainly get a big charge out of it.
And the other thing that listeners should make a note of is if you have seen the website for TAM Australia, tamaustralia.org, the people that did the design for that, Ricky and Tom from Perth, they also designed the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe T-shirt, which is the one that kind of looks really 60s
and the crazy one.
Yeah, that's Ricky.
It's fantastic.
And so they're doing all our design for TAM Australia. And so we're going to be taking with us some more of their wonderful work to TAM Vegas, including some flyers and some posters and some T-shirts. And we've just seen the artwork for the T-shirts, Richard,
Lovely.
and I'm really happy with it. It's fantastic, isn't it?
And the new TAM logo, the one we had before with the kangaroo and the upside down stuff, was more or less something to start the ball rolling. But now we've got the official TAM logo for Australia, which is this lovely design, which is like a molecule. And the word TAM written in a molecule, it's great.
Ricky and Tom are doing all of this for NADA, and they have worked very, very hard, and we're really excited about being able to collaborate with them because their stuff is just
And aren't they
fantastic.
the nicest people? When you and I went over there last year, and they did that photo shoot with us?
Absolutely.
Wasn't that great?
And they offered to do that off their own bat. We didn't have any role in that at all.
And the results have been just astonishing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really important that we have someone from Australia to do the design.
Yeah.
And lots of people know about their work because of the SGU T-shirts, and Rebecca Watson's been wearing them around. So
I've got one, it's great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
for people who don't know their work, head to tamaustralia.org and keep your eye out because there's going to be lots more fantastic stuff from Ricky and Tom.
Yeah, we owe them a lot. They're great people and talented. Absolutely skilled and talented.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that. Now, Drunken Madman.
Yes.
Can you tell us? Oh, we're looking. You've got the site.
I've got the site right up in front of me.
Right in front of you. There's a big picture of James Randi himself.
Looking, what's the word?
Skeptical?
Skeptical. he's in Finland at the moment, I think.
Is he?
Yeah.
It's bloody freezing there. Actually, it's summer, isn't it?
Summer. But
Still probably freezing though.
but my goodness me, I mean, 82, I think, almost 82, and gallivanting around the world. It's just, when I'm 82, I hope I'm gallivanting around the world.
If I'm doing that at that age, it'll be because we've invented zombifying technology. I'll actually be brain dead, but I'll be moving. Yeah.
And I must say that if listeners haven't seen his YouTube video he made commenting about his experiences with chemotherapy, it's one of the most inspirational, wonderful videos you can imagine. Whoever he was, it could be Randy or the guy next door. It's a fantastic video, and hats off to Randy for doing that.
So, Richard, was that a segue into the awful story that's happened in Australia in the last couple of days? This has been blogged by a few people in the last few days, but basically what happened was there was a lady in Western Australia, Perth, Western Australia, who died from bowel cancer a number of years ago, 2005 actually. But there's recently been an inquest going on in Perth at the request of her family, just to work out the circumstances surrounding her death. So her name is Penelope Dingle, and she died in 2005 from untreated bowel cancer at the age of 45, which is very young.
That is really young.
She was diagnosed in 2003, and this was after she first presented with bleeding from the bowel in 2001. And she had a colonoscopy, and she was advised by doctors that she needed surgery to remove the cancer. But she declined conventional medical treatment, instead deciding that she wanted to follow a regimen of alternative treatments, including special diets, vitamins, and homeopathy, which, as we know, is water.
Witchcraft.
Yeah. So her husband is actually a prominent professor of environmental toxicology at a university in Perth. And according to the evidence given at the inquest from friends of Penelope Dingle, she and her husband had made a pact with a homeopath by the name of Francine Scrayen, who had asked her to not take any conventional therapies and to just keep taking her homeopathic remedies. And Mrs. Dingle was in constant phone contact with this homeopath. She never at any stage, according to the information I have, saw her in person, and she advised her to not even seek pain relief for her bowel cancer.
Oh.
So a friend of the couple have said during the inquiry that they were enthralled and entrapped in the spell of Mrs. Scrayen. And a report from the West Australian described this as they had so much faith in this homeopath, the woman who died was totally in her control.
Yeah, I can understand that, yeah.
But it turns out that Mrs. Dingle's diaries have been submitted as evidence at the inquiry, and apparently she made a pact with this homeopath, with her husband, that they would never take conventional therapies, and when she got better from her bowel cancer, her husband would write a book about how special diets, vitamins, and homeopathy can cure cancer.
And airplanes.
And airplanes. Now, of course, tragically that didn't happen. But also one of her friends, one of the friends of Mrs. Dingle, has testified that she came to visit her in October 2003, and she was told on the phone that she was recovering quite well and responding to treatment quite well, but when she saw her, she was so shocked to see how ill she was that she burst into tears. And then she called up the homeopath herself to ask her what was happening, and the homeopath dismissed her concerns and said that Mrs. Dingle's pain was in her head and she merely had constipation.
Over the phone?
Over the phone. Mm-hmm. According to the information that is available to me, at no stage did the homeopath actually visit this lady. She simply consulted over the phone.
And it wouldn't make much difference if she did, I guess.
No, but she also insisted that Mrs. Dingle, who passed away, did not take any other forms of medicine. Now, it gets worse than that.
Worse than this?
It does, I'm afraid. It does get worse than this. So eventually it got so bad that she did agree to have a morphine injection, and she was taken to hospital. But at that point, she was so ill that they did conduct emergency surgery, but it was too late. And she was advised by a nurse, and I have to find a quote here. Quite honestly, it was like watching someone being tortured. It was almost impossible to believe this was happening. And this was from her visiting nurse, Mrs. Brown. And she said the next morning, Mrs. Dingle was rushed to hospital. She only agreed to have emergency surgery after staff told her she had a complete bowel obstruction and would throw up fecal matter before dying a very painful death within 24 hours.
That's horrible.
So apparently she went to hospital and she requested an enema, and the staff said, there's no way we can give you an enema because your bowel is completely obstructed. And there was nothing they could do. And that was the outcome after, I think she was diagnosed in 2002 initially, and by 2005, that was it.
You think that's going to appear in this guy's book?
I don't think he's going to write the book, to tell you the truth, Richard. But
Yeah.
This is Peter Dingle, isn't it? The man who wants to set himself up as the Australian Macaulay.
I don't know about that. But
Well, have you seen his website?
no, I haven't.
Well, he's almost a Macaulay clone on his website. He's got that smiling, white-toothed, sort of grinning doctor thing.
Really?
I don't want to be at all libelous, but he does look like he's setting himself up as a Macaulay clone. Yeah.
Well, you also probably made the connection, Jason, and this is not necessarily connected to this case, but he is also the supervisor of an anti-vax AVN sympathiser by the name of Judy Williman.
That's right, yeah.
And
Is
you-
it Williman or Wilyman?
Probably Wilyman. Yeah,
Well,
Wilyman.
sounds fine to me.
Yeah, Judy Wilyman is a student, a PhD student of Peter Dingle, and she was representing Meryl Dorey at a meeting with the WA Department of Health last Monday about vaccines in Perth, and she gave a talk with Meryl Dorey at the State Library, which everyone who listens to the podcast would know happened last week.
Have you seen the page written by the AVN about that meeting?
Yes, I have. I've seen a couple of blogs about that. Yeah.
How it was a great success, and she said, Meryl said, blah, 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 and there were 3 skeptics in the audience who were too busy blogging and twittering when they could have been listening and learning something.
I did see that. See that. Yeah. But once again, Meryl has blamed the skeptics. But this time, interestingly, she blamed the skeptics for having to get more security, and she says it cost $100 to get 2 more security guards at the library. But interestingly, Richard, this time she's used skeptics with a capital S, which infers Australian skeptics.
What does she think will happen? Does she think that the skeptics will come along with arms or something and threaten them physically? I mean,
She claims that some threats were received somehow, whether it was a phone call or an email or whatever, but I can't picture any of our supporters doing such a thing. I mean, it's conjecture.
It is. It just sounds crazy.
I mean, it's similar to the fact that she made a big song and dance about how she kept 7 seats free for the Department of Health and they didn't turn up. Well, I spoke to my contact at the WA Department of Health, and he said they never planned to turn up. So it's all about drama. It's her saying, I had to get security guards because the skeptics threatened me. People have asked her for evidence on her blog. She has yet to produce any evidence. So it's all about drama. That's all I can think it is.
Oh, what else do you have there at Upgrade?
Well, our listeners would be familiar, if they are regular listeners, of the evidence check that happened in Parliament in the UK some months ago, where the Committee for Science decided that there was no good evidence to support homeopathy being paid for by the NHS, the National Health System. Is it NHS or NHS?
Yes, the NHS,
Yeah. And so the recommendation from the committee was that the government doesn't pay for homeopathy anymore in the UK. Now, the implications of this are huge because there are still 4 homeopathic hospitals in the UK.
There's one right next to Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital in London.
That's right.
Right there.
And can you actually, you're from Wales, but can you explain to our listeners what the implications is that it's next to the Great Ormond Hospital? Because apparently that's quite
Yeah, Great
important.
Ormond Street Hospital is massively famous in the UK and other parts of the world, obviously, for being pretty much as kind of a centre of excellence for children's treatment. And through the 80s when I was growing up, they had massive drives and they were in the media all the time for the good work that they do for children's medicine. And, being right next to Great Ormond Street, it's kind of like sticking, the power balance factory right next to the British Museum. You know? It's pretty bad.
Well, as a result of these findings from the committee, they potentially will lose their funding. And I know that one hospital closed down in Kent in 2009 because the NHS pulled their funding from them. Anyway, there have obviously been opponents to this decision, although I might emphasise that nothing's happened yet. It was just a finding from the committee. One of these people is a guy called David Tredennick.
David Tredennick.
You know him?
I think he's the Shadow Minister for Alternative Health and so on. If I remember correctly, and I could be slightly wrong on this, he was caught up in an expenses scandal not that long ago for spending $800 of parliamentary funds on...
Oh, was that him?
Astrology software.
Is that him?
That's him.
Yes, because
I think that's him.
I heard that on the BBC
the
Friday...
News Quiz?
The News Quiz, yes, yes. So that's David Tredennick.
That's David Tredennick.
Right, well, he's obviously gone into Parliament and said that he doesn't think that we should take money away from complementary medicine.
Well, of course he doesn't. It's his portfolio.
Well, yeah.
But there was a lovely quote from that episode of the News Quiz of, well, of course astrology is related to complementary and alternative medicine. They both belong in a folder marked rubbish.
No idea.
How much did he spend on that software?
I think
it was
about
like 900 quid or something.
Something like 800
It was
quid.
a huge amount of money.
It's a ridiculous amount of money, yeah. I don't charge that much for software, and I develop software.
Yeah, but you don't have astrology software, do you, Jason?
And I wouldn't. Although I did.
Why?
I wrote a numerology program once just for a demo of how to turn text into numbers.
And subscribers to the Skeptic magazine from Australia can read their astrology every quarter in the Skeptic, as written by our very own astrologer, Dr. Duaf Ekaf.
Yes. And hang on, can we play that backwards?
Yeah, listeners might want to think of the words, the name Duaf Ekaf, and play them backwards. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's your homework, listeners. So anyway, I'm getting this information from a story.
Spell them backwards, actually.
Yeah. Or listen to them.
I don't know if that would work.
Well, doesn't Jesus sound like sausage backwards or something?
Yeah, but you're always thinking about eating sausages.
Anyway, this story comes from the New Scientist. It was published on the 3rd of June, and it's written by Michael Brooks. And basically it's about the peer review system in science. Now, the reason I mentioned David Tredennick is because he went into Parliament and he said, I have evidence that homeopathy works. In particular, I have evidence that it works against cancer.
Ooh,
now,
that's
listeners,
interesting.
It's a big claim.
Well, it's a good dovetail to what we've just discussed, actually. But basically, he's basing his claims on a paper that was published in the International Journal of Oncology in February. Now, listeners that follow my blog would know that I took this paper to pieces.
Yes.
And after I took it to pieces, Orac did, David Gorski at Science Blogs. There were so many problems with this paper. It was an absolute fail. And at the end of my blog, I said the International Journal of Oncology has an impact factor of 2.4, but a fail factor of 10 to the 23. But I was sent this by a friend on Twitter, David Briggs, the full text, and I took it to pieces. It took me a whole day to actually analyse what was wrong with it. But basically, the major thing that was wrong with this paper was they were talking about homeopathy killing cancer cells in cell culture. Now, cell culture means that you take cells and you grow them in little dishes and then you treat them with a certain type of compound.
Exactly what you do.
Yeah, this is what I do
part of your work.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day I do this. And they claimed that the homeopathic treatment killed the cells better than anything else. But the biggest problem in this particular paper was that the actual thing they dissolved the homeopathy in also killed the cells to a degree of about 30%. Now, there were no statistics done in this paper, so there was no way to know if there was a statistical difference between the control treatment that you call it, which is the treatment that's not supposed to do anything, and the homeopathic treatment. They also did analysis which they didn't quantitate. They just looked at I think they looked at 14 cells and said, oh, look, they're dying, but they didn't do more than 14. And in science, you need to do maybe 10,000 cells, not just 14 cells.
14?
14 cells.
That's ridiculous.
Yes.
Well, classically, that's small sample size. At that point, you're going.
It's like,
no. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. But the interesting thing about this paper was that it was picked up by people like Homeopathy Plus, which we've mentioned on this show before. And that's because they always make outrageous claims. And in particular, they were taken to task by the TGA several months ago and requested to put a retraction on their website, and they didn't do it. And they sent out an e-newsletter saying, homeopathy, better than chemotherapy for cancer, for breast cancer. Now, I went through this paper with a fine-tooth comb, and I found one sentence in the discussion that said, maybe this might do something for breast cancer, but we don't know yet and we haven't decided. What's happened is it's been picked up by people who are sympathetic to homeopathy, and they've taken off with it and said, homeopathy cures breast cancer. Now, the whole point of this article from Michael Brooks is that the peer review process in science is stuffed. Because if this got published, there's no way for people to know who are not scientists that it's not valid. Unless you are a scientist, like myself or David Gorski, who can sit down and read the whole paper and take a day to critically analyse it, why would you know any different?
This is a very good point, and it reminds me of the term gish gallop. Gish gallop.
Yeah.
Where, and it happened to me the other night when somebody said, I was talking about the Australian Skeptics $100,000 prize for claims of the paranormal. And they said, oh, really? Oh, that's great. Oh, I've got all these papers about remote viewing.
Oh, I was there for that.
You were there for that, right?
Where was that? At Skeptics Pub?
Skeptics Pub.
Oh, really?
And I said, well, that's great, but you expect us to consider that as evidence where we would have to go through every reference and double check it and check the conditions and et cetera, et cetera. I said, look, if you know someone who can do it, just bring them along and let them do it. Now it's just like Randy. He says, don't burden me with millions of papers about this. Just do it. Just demonstrate it.
It's quite right. And the Gish Gallop originally comes from a guy called Dwayne Gish from, let me see, the Institute for Creation Research. Is that right?
He's
one of these creationist things, and he's famous in debates for just reeling off, in a very practiced manner, a whole string of bullshit, frankly.
The representative for the Brower homeopathic company in South Australia, one Robert Medhurst, is famous for that.
Yeah, and so is Meryl Dorey.
Yeah.
I mean, we witnessed that. We went to a debate at Channel 7 where she gish-galloped and held up papers saying, look, it shows here that vaccines cause autism. It shows here that the American government is paying parents who have autistic kids because of MMR.
And Wakefield's been doing that lately.
Wakefield did it as well.
Yeah.
And I talked about that a couple of weeks ago on The Zone, or maybe last week, where he went on the Today Show in America and said to Matt Lauer, my study's been reproduced 5 times in 5 different countries, blah, 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 blah. And there's no way that you can counteract that in the time that they've spat it all out.
Yeah.
And that's what Gish Gallop is. And this is kind of the same thing. But, I mean, really the point that Michael Brooks is making in this article, and I have to thank him because he linked to my blog, thank you. And I had a huge amount of hits for 3 days.
What's your blog again?
Skepticsbook.com.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, there's no way for people to know if it's not, a valid scientific valid science unless they look at it. But I take your point, Richard, and that is that it can't just be one paper. I mean, for people that don't work in science or don't understand the scientific method, you need a body of research to demonstrate an effect before you can say it's real. So one paper from the MD Anderson Center in Tennessee is not evidence that homeopathy can cure breast cancer whilst not damaging other cells.
Now, for those of us who have had very personal experience of breast cancer, my mother 20 years ago had breast cancer, and it was successfully treated by the evils of conventional scientific medicine.
Allopathy.
Mm-hmm. It really hits home. And I'm sure many of our listeners listening right now in their cars or jogging or whatever you're doing may...
Or cleaning colonoscopies.
Painting.
Painting, yes, painting. A lot of people paint, do artwork. will realise this, be it breast cancer or other forms of cancer which have been treated, but or maybe sadly not, know the personal impact this has.
Well, you know, it's even more interesting than that, Richard, because I blogged about this maybe 2-3 months ago, I can't remember, and probably a month ago I had a comment left on this particular blog by someone who said they worked on this particular paper. They then requested, when they saw the manuscript, that their name was taken off the paper.
Oh.
That comment's on my blog. So if you want to go and have a look and comment, go to skepticsbook.com and look for the paper about breast cancer. And she said that she did analyses that the authors didn't like because they didn't suit their conclusions. And so she said, I don't want to be a part of this. And I know some people on Twitter, one is at MedTech, who's written to the MD Anderson Cancer Centre and specifically said to them, what are you doing putting your name to this? Because the problem is now it's being tabled in Parliament as valid evidence. And it's completely flawed. Completely flawed. Absolutely. Yeah. And I took it to pieces and so did David Gorski. And it should not be in the peer review. It should be retracted. I mean, Michael Brooks says in here, we didn't need Andrew Wakefield to show that the way things currently run, peer review is a hugely flawed system. And it is.
It is, yes. You've made that comment to me before from personal experience.
Yeah, like 2 days ago. When my paper got knocked back again, yeah.
I can't help thinking of the words of Carl Sagan. The method of science is tried and true. It's not perfect, but it's the best we have. It's not perfect. Of course it's not perfect.
Well, you know, it's run by humans and we are not perfect creatures.
No.
But interestingly on this, so that's been tabled in Parliament as a cure for cancer, as evidence that cancer can be cured by homeopathy.
Okay, let me quote from this article. This study was mentioned in Parliament and the statement that homeopathy can kill cancer cells is now a matter of public record in a spectacular failure.
Interestingly, right. Yeah. Because there is actually an active Parliament, I guess. I could be slightly wrong on the details, but the 1941 Cancer Act in the UK mandates the ways you can claim to cure cancer, and a lot of quacks have been prosecuted underneath that, and I'm wondering if this has been made under parliamentary privilege?
Well, no, actually that's not the case, Jason, because the paper doesn't claim that.
But
it's everyone else's interpretation of it.
Did David Tredinnick claim that? Is that the way he's worded it? I mean, I'm not saying that you can be prosecuted under this. It's just interesting that
I don't know.
We have statutes in the UK on this.
I haven't heard what he said particularly, but all I can tell you is that it says in this article from Michael Brooks that he did say in Parliament homeopathy can kill cancer cells. In defence of the evidence check that happened a few months ago. Yeah.
Listeners might, at this stage, want to run to their computers and Google James Randi BBC homeopathy and see the video of where James Randi ran, it must have been almost 10 years ago now, 8 years ago, whatever the case may be, did a special for the BBC where he fairly tested the claims of homeopathy, and guess what? It was shown to be very wanting.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Jason, because the homeopath involved in this case in Perth, Francine Scrayan, it's illegal in New South Wales to claim to be able to treat untreatable diseases with alternative medicine. So there's a potential that she may be prosecuted in this case. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but she did tell this lady, Mrs. Dingle, not to take any other medicine and that she could cure her. Well, I don't know if she actually told her she could cure it, but she advised her not to.
Well, this is the sort of thing that will come out in the inquest, and just to reiterate, none of us around the table are actually lawyers, so we can't comment.
And we certainly don't know the full facts of the situation, and
no.
We'll leave it at that because we'll leave that up to our justice system and see what happens.
But I just want to say in closing that, I mean, this is a case where the family went to the coroner and said we want an inquest. How many cases of this happens and nobody bothers, And I had a journalist call me about a year ago and say, I'm trying to find someone who's been damaged by chiropractic when Simon Singh was coming to Australia and we were hosting his talk. And I called a few people and they said to me, well, they're either dead or they're too embarrassed to talk about it.
That's an excellent point, Rachel, and one I haven't really thought through, actually. There must be thousands of cases of damage or ill health or death due to people ignoring real medicine and turning to quackery, which simply are not reported.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that have gone through that, and it's not so much that they died because of alternative medicine, it's because they
waited too long?
Well, no, not just that. They had faith in it when they knew they were going to die anyway. I mean, if they have terminal illnesses...
Yeah.
Do you want to wait for the planing?
It's atmospheric.
Yes, another plane. It's not sound effects, folks. Rachel really does live under the flight path.
Instead of courtesy bus announcements tonight, we have planes taking off. But the thing that really keeps me going and doing this stuff, Richard, is people that actually get scammed by these things. And you know, there's a point where you are so desperate and you know you're going to die, that you do get sucked in by these things, and there has to be more legislation to stop this from happening.
And I have not been in that situation, nor have you or Jason or most people I know. Randy was once put to him, James Randi, it was once put to him by somebody in an audience, well, what if you were terminally ill? Would you turn to some sort of alternative stuff? You know, try something? He said, no, absolutely not. I wouldn't waste my time and money.
Well, you know what? I couldn't actually say. I might possibly succumb to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's one of the things I say. I debate with Christians and theists quite a lot online, and they say, you wait till you're on your deathbed and you'll turn. And I just have to say, well, yeah, maybe I will. Maybe I'll be a little bit crazy in the head. How do I know if I'm about to die?
It's a very good point. We don't know. We would all hope that we would have the presence of mind and the logic and the intellect and all the rest of it to carry on.
One of the things that's come out of this, and prior to this, also in response to the evidence check in the UK, is that there is some movement now in Australia to change laws. And in this particular case, with Mrs. Dingle, the coroner has said that he may start making new laws that this stuff can't happen. So it took a tragedy for that to happen, but let's hope that something will change in Australia in terms of homeopathy. And Dr. Ken Harvey, has been absolutely vocal about this for a number of years, and I hope that we can get some changes soon.
You know what? I'm optimistic. I think we will. I think there are enough people like our friends and Loretta, the jelly bean lady, of course, who are fighting very hard about this sort of thing. That, yes, we have every reason to be optimistic. But on that upbeat note, on that optimistic
Let's be optimistic.
Since our pizzas have arrived,
delicious.
I couldn't help but notice they've come through the door. I'd like to thank Jason. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Richard.
Lovely to see you. Dr. H, thank you for letting us use your front room.
You're welcome. Sorry for the plane noises.
No, it's part of the charm. And a very special thank you to our listeners out there who I hope enjoy the show. And a lot of you, I'm very pleased to say, contribute by donations, which is very kind of you and very much appreciated. And listeners who subscribe. Less than $1 an episode, and those listeners, believe me, your money is very well spent. We don't get paid for this, of course.
Except by Big Pharma.
Big Pharma and Big Wine, apparently.
Big Wine and Big Pharma.
But no, in all seriousness.
Who is Big Wine? It's a new one.
I like Big Wine. The bigger the better.
Your contribution... Oh dear, it's time for pizza. Your contributions really do help keep this show going, and it's a symbol of your support and your appreciation of what we're doing week after week after week. Believe me, we love it. I can't imagine not doing the show because it means so much to me and to you, I think, Dr. H, and to our listeners. So thank you very much. If you are so moved by the show and you think we're doing a good job, please visit our website and think about clicking on the subscription list. Less than $1 a week. Less than a cup of coffee, as we say.
Do we?
We do.
Okay. Well then, yeah.
It's a lot less than a cup of coffee.
It's a lot less these days. But Dr. Rachy and Jason, thank you and cheers.
Cheers.
And let's enjoy our pizza.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you for listening to The Skeptic Zone, and thank you to all those people who turned up to watch our very own Dr. Chrissy Wilson give her talk at London Skeptics in the Pub. By all accounts, a great evening. We look forward to some reports from Dr. Chrissy very soon. So please join us again next week for the next episode of The Skeptic Zone. Until then, this is Richard Saunders signing off and looking forward to seeing you all at TAM Las Vegas from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.